everyone. Lovely to see you on this Saturday morning. And I am talking, if you can read it, it looks backwards to me, but it's the real reason you can't stop your child's temper tantrums. You have a child who melts down at the drop of a hat, who melts down anytime they don't get their way, or you've tried everything. You've looked at You might have taken a different parenting class. You might have read a bunch of different articles or parenting books, and you're still frustrated that you don't have it figured out. And their big emotions might be taking over. Their big emotions might be ruining the whole day, where you feel like you're in this angry child cycle that you can't get out of. The real reason you can't stop your child's tantrums is often not for one thing. I'm not going to tell you one thing today. What I am excited I'm going to do is I'm going to give you a bit of a smorgasbord of my best practices and noticing from the last 27 years of what really goes beyond, what keeps parents stuck in this angry child cycle so you can get out of it. I want nothing more for you than for you to enjoy a peaceful and a fun home. And if you don't get the answer, come back to me and ask me, and let's dive deep into it. I remember having one client whose son, they were going into a restaurant for a lovely dinner, and she turned around because she saw all these people in the restaurant just like their mouth gaping and in horror. And she turns around and she sees her child going past all the newly fresh tables with tablecloths and place settings. And he's taking the spoon or the utensils and he's licking them and he's putting them down. So if you have a child that does something like that, or you just know that you're losing it more than you want to, or maybe you're not losing it, you're just totally exhausted from dealing with the meltdowns over and over again, you are in the perfect place. And I am so, so glad you are here with me today. First of all, for those of you who don't know me, hello, I'm Kelly from joyfullyparenting.com. And it is my great honor to help moms with strong-willed kids, get them to listen, but motivate them to listen without bribing, without yelling, without caving in. So everyone can really dial down the stress and get on the same family team. Yeah, so that there's more harmony, there's more joy. You can actually enjoy being around your child more without being so depleted. But there are 3 common parenting mistakes when it comes to parenting a stubborn child. And the reason I want to start with these is because if you are using these, it can bite you in the butt. And a lot of times, some of these things will actually work for more agreeable kids, but if they're not working for you, we've got a problem. And I want to make sure that you are aware of these. Here we go. So I want you to ask yourself, are you making any of these 3 common parenting mistakes? The first one is mistake number 1, repeatedly losing your cool when your child acts out. But here's the thing. Many of us try to fix it in the moment, or we lose it and then we feel really, really guilty about it. The challenge is that when we feel guilty and we berate ourselves or like, oh, I can't believe I did that, or the kids go off to school and we've had a horrible morning and we just think, I can't wait till they get home because then I want to apologize to them, or, oh my gosh, I'm the worst mother in the world. That just keeps us stuck in losing it more. It doesn't buoy our energy. It doesn't give us, hope for changing it. So that's the first one. The second one of my favorites, is talking everything out. So for those of you who could maybe relate to me, which is a recovering people pleaser, true and true. Blah. It's, we want to connect. We want to talk everything out. We want to explain, this is why we're doing that. The challenge with a strong-willed child is that talking everything out, especially when they're losing it, they can't hear you. Notice, they're not listening. They are not rational. So the absolutely worst time to talk everything out is when the heat is turned on. It's when the drama is turned up. It's when your child is melting down. That is when explanations, lectures, I told you so, the reason we're doing this, we need to go to grandma's, we need to be there on time. Any of that is not going to land for them. This is the one that I have definitely fallen into in the past, is that I think I wanted to feel good about myself. Like, oh, I'm a good mom. I'm explaining everything. No, this is not the time, because it'll just exhaust you more. And your child won't respect anything you have to say, which can just frustrate you on the inside, which lowers your patience as well. The third one is using parenting tools that only work for easygoing kids. So I can think of another family I have been working with, and they were so frustrated where their first two kids were pretty easygoing. Their third one, they were called the Attila the Hun. She just didn't want to do anything that they wanted to do. She pushed them. There was talk back, there was questioning everything like a skilled cross-examining lawyer. And it can be really frustrating when you have used tools that have worked with other kids, but they don't work with yours. Strong-willed kids can test us, and they can help us become far better parents. They can raise the bar in terms of our parenting. When you have a more agreeable kid, a more easygoing kid, parenting's a lot easier. So anyways, I'm curious, do any of these three do you fall into? It says, and then the dessert plate went flying past my head. True and true and true. So 26 years ago, I was a full-time nanny for two blind, stubborn brothers, and their superpower were finding all my child discipline loopholes. Their last nanny only lasted a few months because she beat them up. Pardon me, they beat her up on the public bus. So when a dessert plate literally went zinging past my head, I knew that something had to change. And I share this story to let you know where I have come from. And I tried everything. So I don't know if you're like me, but maybe you feel like you have tried absolutely everything. I tried consequences, take away privileges, nagging, timeouts, talking on their level, which we just talked about as being one of the mistakes. I even got my master's in counseling. None of it was working consistently. But it was only when I realized and discovered that they weren't the problem did it finally start to change. I realized the more I tried to control them, the less control I actually had. And this is the paradox of control when it comes to parenting. It's true. The more you try to control, the less control you have. And so you might say, well, wait a minute, how do I get control? And this is one of the secret sauces I want to share with you today. It's to parent yourself. That strong-willed kids, and this is when I go back to the real reason you can't stop your child. I'm going to tell you the first one, and I'm going to ask you to take a deep breath, because sometimes it's a little difficult to hear. And that is, sometimes our kids are shining a flashlight on areas of ourselves that we don't really like. And so we're more triggered, we're more edgy, we're more impatient, we're more irritated about certain behaviors. So my own ADHD boy, his room can look like a cyclone went off. Like after, like, you're like, what? We were just in there and it was totally clean within 20 minutes. You're like, how did that happen? And years ago, I realized how irritated I was getting with it, how nitpicky I was getting with it, how impatient I was getting. And it wasn't until I started to do some of my own really deep work on realizing that part of my triggers, part of my yucky part of my own childhood was having a mother that was incredibly disorganized. And so our house could look like a cyclone went off. I remember walking into a room sometimes and there was no floor. I could never see the floor because it was all dirty laundry everywhere. And it was like, oh, that's why this bugs me so much. That's why my patience level can't be at the place I want it to. That's why the patience I have for other things and other people's kids and other issues is there. But this one, I fall apart. And when a strong-willed child feels that they're being coerced, they're being pushed, it's a have to, it's all of that, they will fight you tooth and nail. And that's what was happening. There was this power struggle that was happening. You know, what would be your number one temper tantrum issue? Like, is there something where it's like, oh my God, like if only we could get out the door in time, like only to just be on time for school, that would do it for me? Or why does bedtimes have to be such a thing? Like we do the same thing. It's the same routine night after night. We have teeth brushing, we have bath, we have stories, but that's the hint that you have work to do is that you're getting really frustrated about something. But usually there is a story about we're having a need for control that's not being met. We're having a need for freedom that's not being met, or we go into survival mode. And for me, and it sounds ridiculous, it's an emotional survival mode. But for me, my childhood home with my mother was not safe at all. And so seeing the mess everywhere just triggers me back to then. And for those of you people pleasers out there who are really nice moms, and I played that role a lot. And there's nothing wrong with being, well, maybe there is. There's a difference between being nice and there's a difference between being kind. And for me, the difference is nice is a role we play. Nice is like a have to. Kind is from a place of compassion. It's a place of wisdom. It's a place of, I'm doing this for the greater peace, joy, harmony of the home going forward, not to get an instant smile out of our kid, but it's a grounded, it's not coming from old programming, old triggers, etc. I've discovered there's 9 steps on the peaceful parenting path, what I call the peaceful parenting path, moving towards it. And those 9 steps are critical if you want to raise a successful, strong-willed child, a child who still retains their spirited spunk and nature and all of that, but they're also respectful. And you're also not unknowingly feeding into either power struggles or raising an entitled, spoiled child that no one really wants to be around. So these are the 3 steps. And the reason I bring them up, so we've been talking about parenting yourself. This one is all about, we always talk about with child tantrums, we often talk about, regulating them, making sure that they're regulated. Really what I want and encourage more than anything else is are you doing the work of helping yourself regulate, helping to get, I see of it like an iceberg. An iceberg took in the day, the Titanic down, which was touted as like all the bells and whistles, the most amazing technology of the day in terms of nautical. But here's the thing, because, you can see the iceberg on the top, what's below the surface is often what gets us the most. It's a very rare few of us who can, I'm going to say, totally know our blind spots, our weak spots, because we're too close to it. Those places we were told to shut down, to ignore as children, those are the places that our strong-willed kids give us the gift of, to help do more healing on us so we can become a better parent. If you want, I'm just putting it together, so I'll have it by next week, but if you want to be on the list I've got 5 1-minute for busy moms mindful meditations. They're like visualizations, breath work. They're 1 minute each. If you know that you're losing it and want to increase your own self-regulation, these are perfect for them. So yeah, DM me or put in the chat that you want to be put on the list and I will include you in that. Generally, these are the 3 steps that if you don't have in place, you will have more child temper tantrums. So when I call the first this pink first row, the love foundation, and love stands for living our values every day. And here's the thing. Sometimes we'll try on different parenting styles, but it's actually not congruent with who we are. It's not true for us, or we'll start playing games. Like, for instance, I was just talking with a mom the other day and she was like, yeah, I'm using 1, 2, 3 all the time. Like, okay, you have 3 seconds before you jump and get your clothes on. You have 3 seconds to brush your teeth. 1, 2, and her 8-year-old's like, so what happens after 3? What happens after 3, Mom? And she's like, I'm going to punish you. And there comes a time, especially with strong-willed kids, where they call us out. because they are so smart and they'll call us out. When we're inconsistent, when we're jumping around, we don't really know what we're doing. It's like playing a giant chess match with our kids, but we've forgotten all the rules to play chess and we're kind of faking it and pretending. They know that. There was a client I had this week and she's got a teen. She's way past the preschool child temper tantrum phase, but she was sharing that her son has been calling her a liar lately. She felt like, yeah, well, that's not true. But once we started talking more, we realized that there's many times where she acts like everything is fine and she's syrupy sweet, nice, not kind, but nice. And realizing that on the inside, she's really seething, like, what the F? Like, what is going on? And her child sees through it. So that's the first thing is, do you have the consistent foundation in place? Do you have consistent boundaries in place that are in harmony with what you truly value? And this is why it's so important to not only parent yourself, but then make sure that your boundaries are in harmony with you, with what you believe, with what you want. The second step is biology boosters. And this is an important one for child tantrums. So just looking at our biology in terms of what we need. If you realize that your child is melting down regularly at a certain time of the day, often this can be after school, I've seen, and parents will be flabbergasted where they pick them up from school. The teacher's like, oh, they've had a great day. Everything's good. And then they totally melt down on the way home, but they've been saving it all up. So here's the other little secret about our strong-willed, wonderful kids. They are often sensitive kids in disguise. And that if there's not the routine in place, if they aren't getting good sleep and good food and all of that, it can create this monster cycle where they are on the verge of melting down all the time. But then there's also the emotional part. And I've really seen this tear parents apart and tear families apart, where you can have that one child that their rude child behavior is putting everybody off. Others in the family aren't knowing how to deal with it. And there's so much tension in the family. It's like families split off and they're on different teams. I've seen this in marriages where then sometimes couples don't feel like they're on the same parenting page. I've seen this with like siblings, and it can become very divisive. And when a strong-willed child feels that divisiveness, doesn't feel like everyone has their back, and doesn't know how to also support everyone else in the family, that yes, it's not all about them. The challenge here can be that they lash out, that they are fighting you, they are testing you all the time. How are the biology boosters going in your home? Do you really have a routine in place that works for everyone? Are you working together as a team? Are you doing chores together, or is it a one-woman show? This last one on the biology boosters is self-esteem. With strong-willed kids in particular, many of them struggle with anxiety. And so where is your child on, do they truly have true self-esteem where they can celebrate their own successes and be okay with their own mistakes? Or are they so sensitive when they make a mistake? And can they do the same for others? Can they celebrate other successes without being threatened? A sibling, for instance, friends, for instance, kids, on the playground, or are they trying to put them down to feel better about themselves? The last one, which is I call spark parenting. This is the one that most parenting courses and experts will talk about. This is where like the discipline, the how-tos, and I'm going to share a couple of my most favorite child temper tamers with you today. And this is where they live in this path. But spark parenting, I love a good acronym. Can you see? Stands for smart, purposeful approach to raising kids. And when I say smart, it's another acronym. I know it's annoying, which means simple, meaningful actions repeated over time. So do we have those simple, meaningful actions repeated over time that are purposeful, that actually work to raise a child who feels good about themselves, feels good about others, can mutually respect others, can celebrate others, and can learn from their mistakes and are open to listening to you, impacting and influencing your child, whether you like it or not. That's just being in their life. We do that. But are you doing it in a positive way? Are you doing it in a way where they will come to you as a teenager and tell you stop? You're not only a safe place to land, but they respect what you say. You feel like you've really cleaned up some of your own childhood trauma. You've cleaned it up. Because if you haven't, our kids have this funny way of helping us clean it up. And if we don't, that's when we get really, really frustrated. Moms who are really worried about their kids' situation at school, where they're getting called in to the teacher because they're not playing nice, they're hitting other kids, etc. And for some moms who also struggled with friendships in school or bullying in school, it can mean that what solutions we're looking at, etc., is coming from a very young place. It's like we go back and we're 9 or 7 ourselves, and that's the perspective we're using. And that means that we aren't coming from a wise, grounded place to find the solutions. And not only that, it's sometimes not even what it looks like. It's the fears. Remember, I talked about that iceberg? It's the fears below the surface that our wonderful, strong-willed kids are picking up on. It's like they have an antenna, a special invisible antenna to pick up. They've got like spidey senses to pick up our issues, to pick up where we're not congruent, where we're not in integrity. It says, I hear what you're saying, Kelly, but what do you do for a child who tells you they're the mom, you're not, they're the mom, and continually uses rude child behavior to get their way? They can't deal with when they don't get their way. Okay, Judy, when you have the stubborn child like that who wants to take control so much, that a lot of stubborn kids, remember I talked about the sensitive kids, they armor themselves. It's like being an armadillo or a turtle, like they have that shell around them. So somewhere along the line, they haven't felt safe, they haven't felt heard, they haven't felt understood. And so they armor themselves. And how they armor themselves is like, I'm going to go through the world and I'm going to be okay because I'm here. And it's something called counter will that is a psychological term, but it's like all of us have free will. You know, you can tell your child what to do, you can try to make them do it, but you know that with a stubborn child, there's this extra like, why should I do it? Why? Tell me. Because they're so highly intelligent, if they see that you don't have this, if you aren't grounded and strong and your boundaries are strong, but not overly strong, not coming from a do as I say so because I do, but they make sense. They're consistent. If there's any wiggle room in that, oftentimes they won't feel safe. And they're like, if you're not going to take control, I'm going to take control. And the stubborn, strong-willed kids, they will test the boundaries. We actually want them to test the boundaries, but we only want them to test the boundaries once our boundaries are strong. Because once our boundaries are strong, in integrity, in harmony with our values, then we've got it. Because they can test us and it's like, no, we're good. This is we're containing. I'm going to tell you a bit of dialogue that I would use, but here's the thing. It's not going to work consistently until you have consistent boundaries. So if you are caving in, I just want you to check in because so many of us have done this. If you are caving in, if you're saying one thing, but doing another, if you're telling them to stop yelling, but you're yelling and you're not walking your talk, they aren't going to respect it. The good news is you don't have to be perfect, but you have to get it like, I would say, you have to get that A. So an A here in Canada is 86%. So I would say like 86 or more % of the time, you got to have strong boundaries. And on those times where you cave in or you make a mistake yourself, you need to own it, but not from a like, oh my gosh, I'm so guilty. But to own it and say, this is what I'm doing to improve. And mama's not perfect. Okay. So that's my caveat, my lead in. So with someone who says like, I'm the mom, and say, yeah, one day you will be the mom, and I'm going to so look forward to seeing how you parent. And so the reason I say that is because often strong-willed kids will like throw you a bone and they want to see what you do with it. They want to see like, oh yeah, bring it on. So if you're like, well, no, you aren't the parent, blah, 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 blah. That is taking the bone and both of you have this bone. You're both two dogs that are fighting over the bone. With me, it's like, yeah, one day you will be. And won't that be interesting? Huh? What would you do as a mom in this situation? What do you think you'll do? How do you think you'll parent? What will you do different? It'll be interesting to see. So it's like I leave the bone there, I look at it and I get really curious, like, oh, isn't that an interesting bone? Tell me more about that bone. Huh? Yeah, that's interesting. You feel like the mom right now. Is it because you want a mom? Would you like to be a mom one day? Do you see the difference? I sidestep it. I don't take the bait. And that's the real big one with child tantrums. So thank you for that, Judy. I love it. Judy, and for anybody else who has a question out there, I'm also, for the best question that I feel like other people can use and can learn from, I'm also giving away 1 month free to my my Strong-Willed Child Solutions Bootcamp. And this starts in October. It's a 9-week class. I'm really excited about it. If you ever thought, I wonder what it would be like to have a parenting coach, or I think I'm ready to go deep. I'm ready to finally get our family being in harmony together. I'm finally ready to stop the chaos and the drama, the inconsistent parenting. I want to get on a similar parenting page. I want my child to be more agreeable and happy. If you have ever thought that, this might be a great opportunity for you. I'm going to quickly just take 2 minutes to cover what is included in it. If you might be sitting there and thinking, yeah, I can do this for myself, which is totally cool. I'm going to go through the 9 steps and what you get, because whether you work with me or somebody else, these are the 9 steps I have found that all parents need to get in order to successfully parent a strong-willed child. So in week 1, we talked about this a lot today, which is learn how to parent yourself. So where you need to get, and it sometimes takes time, is to stop stubborn child arguments without needing to lose it, so you can have more control and let mom guilt go. So do you have the trigger reducers for you, those actionable steps to maintain and boost your patience? Can you let go of the resentment, the anger, the frustration without beating yourself up for having it? And can you be more of the mom your children deserve? You know, I hear from a lot of moms that they kind of secretly wish for their pre-mom life back sometimes, but hide it and feel guilty about it. Can you parent yourself enough while you're parenting your child even better when you do this, so that you don't feel that, so you actually can love those aspects of being a mom, but you can still have you. Do you know what I mean? Still be you. Second one is do you have the tools to establish love boundaries? So getting a consistent boundary foundation in place so your child will respect what comes out of your mouth, your actions, what you do. And this means taking 100% responsibility for what's going on so you can get back in that parenting driver's seat. And so that doesn't mean you're going to shut your child down and, they might be having a tantrum in the back seat, so to speak. But it's knowing how to curb them, to reduce the exhaustion that comes with them, and to discover how love, which is really living from our values, sets the foundation for respect. So you don't have to deal with so much rude child behavior. The next one is having a smart mom schedule, right? Like, are you in control of your to-do list? Are you productive? Are you patient enough and you're not feeling like you're not doing anything well, that you're juggling too many balls and you're dropping too many of them? The next one is to really learn. It's busting through angry child stress. And so do you have personalized mindfulness strategies? I have one called the kitchen sink strategy. And are you identifying those, I call them family F factors, but that they keep you connected? And do you have bedtimes? Are they easy peasy for you? It's a must. We also talked about get your team family on board, another acronym. And team stands here for together everyone achieves more, which I totally believe. So can you eliminate the family tension and inspire your kids to clean up after their messes without reminding ad nauseum and enjoy more family quality time together? Can you get on the same parenting page? Do you have tools to do that? The sixth step is to motivate your child's self-esteem. And so this is prevent raising an anxious people pleaser, and really motivating their passion, establishing healthy competition so that you can raise a confident, respectful, and happy kid. And this, we've gone up to the top step, which is called spark parenting, that third level we talked about before, but it's have you found your own perfect parenting style? So this is key to becoming and remaining one of the main positive influences in your child's life. I want that for you. And are you building an angry child's respect and responsibility muscle without the back talk? This is one of my favorites. Can you get what I call picket fence boundaries? So when you think of a picket fence, and I think it's very funny. So I live in a 1907 house that was barged over from Seattle, USA. Most people know I'm in Canada, but it was barged over. But I put a white picket fence around my house. And a white picket fence, it's cheery, but people absolutely know the deer can't get in and eat my garden. That this is where the delineation is. This is where the boundaries are. If your boundaries keep a moving target, that's when you'll have that inconsistent parenting. That's when your child will backtalk more, question you more, fight you more. And a picket fence, if you try to hop over, which I did a couple months ago, it hurts. Like it gives you a bit of a poke, like it's not, but it's also not chain link fence. And the last one is, can you weather any angry child storm? Can you get through fights quicker, but end up feeling closer together? Can you get a genuine apology out of your child? These are the things that I not only want for you, feel that you and your child and family totally, utterly deserve. Because that's when, it's not that you're perfect, but that's when you can get through the tantrums, yours and theirs, without doing damage to the relationship going forward. Yeah, that's what I don't want for you. When I used to work at family services, there was one time where it was a Monday morning and I went to get my next client. And as I'm walking down the hall, I hear an F you, mom, and a door shuts. And that's my new client. And she's locked herself in the car and she's so mad. And she was dating, I think it was a 24-year-old. She was sleeping with him. It was just such a mess. And if a strong-willed child doesn't feel safe, doesn't feel that you have got the parenting reins, they can do some pretty crazy and dangerous things. And I don't want that for you. But also, if you have questions about the boot camp and wonder if it's for you, reach out to me and we can hop on a call and see if it's a fit. The first 2 weeks, if at all you feel it's not a fit, you're more than welcome to bow out, get all your money back, etc. I only want it for moms who are really willing to do what it takes to make a huge transformation, to have their own stubborn child turn around. That is what I want. Okay, so I promised some of my favorite temper tamers, so I'm going to share those with you as well. So in terms of insights, have you had any insights so far on what might be the real reason you can't stop your child tantrums of what I've shared so far? Is it the lack of consistency? Is it you don't have the boundaries in place that actually work for a stubborn child? Maybe you're using what works for a lot of agreeable kids or what had worked for previous kids, but not for your own. These are the things, these distinctions and the education and the learning. None of us learned this in high school. I don't know about you. I learned a little bit in doing my master's in counseling psychology for sure, But most of us never learned, like, what do you do when a child is totally melting down or tells you that the timeout mat, they've changed, they've moved it to upstairs? Like, what do you do? So here are some of my most favorite temper tamers. Okay, so a couple that I want to talk about. Okay, the first one, I'm going to take a couple from each one. The first one is from the Monster Mom Exorcism. So I feel like no matter if you are more a type A controller or if you are a recovering people pleaser, I feel like all of us can use this one. And all of us, whether it comes from feeling really impatient and triggered and we lose it, or for those people pleasers out there, you're just losing it on the inside and seething like, I can't believe you did that. And who does that? And kind of go into your little righteous, I call mine righteous Rhonda part. These are important pieces to look at. So the first one here, and the only one I'm going to talk about in this group, is to go mute, temporarily go mute. And that means stop talking. That if your child is melting down, if you are starting to lose it, don't talk. And this doesn't mean to ignore your child and use it as a punishment. It is to realize that you are in no position to be talking and to get a response that you want from your child. Because if your child's losing it too, they aren't rational, they aren't thinking and straight and going to be learning anything. So temporarily go mute to say, hey, I can see we're both really upset. We need to talk about this later. Right now is not the time. Okay, from the Niagara Falls action. So the purpose to this is to have compassion and to let them release emotions. So if you came from a household where sharing your emotions, sharing your anger was not welcomed, this can be a tricky place, and it can be a place of growth. So for me, one of my favorite ones is the magic wand empathy. And what that looks like is, wow, yeah, tell me more. Well, that's your first one. Tell me more. And the second would be like, oh, if I had a magic wand, I would totally change this for you. And leave it at that. Because sometimes just the acknowledgement of their pain, of what they think is an injustice, and you might totally disagree, by the way, and that's okay. So in that case, to still be congruent, to still be honest, you could say something like, if I was your age and if I was you, I might also think the same. The third one is ostrich in the sand action. The interesting thing is this. So a lot of times I like this ostrich in the sand. People think it's the ostrich hiding. Many of them don't realize that they bury their eggs under the sand. So often they're turning them and taking care of their own children. So the goal here is to regulate your child. And to not take anything they're saying personally. And this is where we need to go back to the parent yourself, because if you are taking it personally, then Houston, we got a problem. Because when they are melting down and they are saying vicious things to you, etc., and I haven't always not been able to take it personally. You're the worst mother in the world. I hate you, whatever it is. It's like, wow, I can see you're really upset, right? It could be a tell me more, or it might just be, hey, do you need a hug? And by the way, they might not be ready for a hug. So it can be like, when you're ready for a hug, I'm here. And the ostrich in the sand actions too is just noticing their own ebbs and flows. With a lot of kindergartens these days are all day now, or daycare. Your kid is in daycare all day. For a sensitive soul, that can be a lot. It can be too much. And so noticing that, wow, they are so overloaded and they just need to release these emotions is a big one to having more compassion and understanding and not taking it personally. The last one here is the ninja actions, what I call. And so this is my favorite one here is the vacuum insurance. And this one I have done many times and I love it. And because here's the thing. If you have a child who's completely trying to control the situation and really trying to do their best to rope you in, I'll tell you my story. It was getting the kids to school on time was such a challenge because one of the boys, this is when I was nannying, one of the boys would intentionally be late because his oldest wanted to be on time, and the youngest was like, he could diddle and daddle and waste time so that then his oldest would be late or we would be running there. And I could see it on his face. There was this gleeful, like, pixie energy of, haha, I got you just where I want you and I'm in control. I realized this was happening and I'm like, this isn't fair. So I said, hey, I've noticed there are times where you take longer in the morning and then late. It's not fair to your older brother. So just so you know, starting tomorrow, if you choose to not be on time, we'll go without you and I'll come right back and take you to school. I had to rejigger my work to do that because I was also working at a university doing my pre-doctoral internship as a counselor there. So I came home, and do you think he was ready? No. And he was like, I told you I was ready. And he's freaking out. He's just like yelling at me, like, I hate you. How could you do that? It's not fair. And it was so hard for me not to engage and it was really getting difficult for me to go mute temporarily. And so I just kept saying, hey, when you're ready to go, let me know. And so it was a broken record. When you're ready to go, let me know. But then what I did is I pulled out the most powerful thing, which is the vacuum insurance. Because as he was like spewing stuff at me, yelling stuff at me, I could be like, sorry, I'm busy. I can't hear you right now. When you're ready to go, let me know. And I think that first day, it took over an hour. He was so entrenched in being right. And then suddenly he realized, oh, it was recess and he was missing recess. And I was like, yeah, I guess so. And then he was ready to go. And now I know some of you will say, well, then he wasn't on time and he wasn't. But here's the thing. Sometimes you have to be late to be on time. But in terms of the consistency there, I was like, when you're ready to go, let me know. I'm not going to make you. I'm not going to drag you. Tried that. You're too big for that. If he was 3, it was a different story. I could have taken him in his pajamas. But at 8, I wasn't going to do that. And I couldn't do that. It gets to a point. So humbling, yes. Yeah, I'm curious, what kind of ahas have you had today? Any ahas where you're like, ooh, I really love that, or I'd like to try, whether it is the insurance, whoopsie, or it is the the vacuum insurance, or whether it's going mute. And I can think of one mom who's reached out to me a couple times and she's really frustrated because she's tried everything. And this is her question. Her question is, when I've tried everything, talking on his level, making sure he gets good sleep, but he's still pushing back all the time. And I can understand it because he has such big emotions, but she also has a new baby. And so it's interesting. I haven't chatted with her about this yet, but one of the things I'm wondering is, what are the fears that she has about having this new baby? Because again, remember when I talked about that antenna our strong-willed kids have? That antenna often is ooh, I'm picking up also on your fears. And sometimes we're not even aware of it, but we can be like, or that sense of a loss of, oh my gosh, will he be okay now that will I have as much to give? Will our relationship be the same because we're so close? These are the things that can create friction, that can create extra tension, that can create our child to start feeling like, ooh, I don't know what's going on, until we really identify it. And sometimes we can be so focused and coddling our kids, and in that we're keeping them in their big emotions rather than holding them as able. And I think that this is where grandparents have that wisdom that sometimes we don't. Teachers as well, who've seen a lot of kids, or like nursery school teachers where they're like, oh yeah, like potty training. I might have somebody being like, oh my gosh, we're not going to get in. And like, it's very rare that I have like a 7-year-old in my office who isn't potty trained. Like, they get it, but they get it in their own time. But sometimes we get into so much worry and so much, I need to control this. I need to worry about this. I need to do everything I can. And we're not letting it breathe enough to relax into it and to trust. that to trust they're going to get this. And if they don't feel from us that we believe that they can get it, they often won't believe it for themselves. I want to say thank you to you for your showing up, for your commitment to being the best mother you can be, and for giving yourself grace and for giving yourself leeway and also loving yourself up in a way that's not selfish, but in a way that you can forgive you. Because if you are too hard on yourself, you're going to be too hard on them, whether you know it or not. You might play the nice one on the outside, but if inside there's this worry about having to micromanage, and that's when we become a bit of helicopter parents. And here's the interesting part. You don't have to be an overt helicopter parent to be a helicopter parent. So sometimes we go into that like counseling, oh, well, if you did this and blah, 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 blah. Strong-willed kids, they don't trust that. They don't buy it and they don't respect it. So I'm wishing you all the very best in your home. I would love to get to know you better. If you have more questions around how to parent your child in a way that you can motivate them to be more agreeable, you can motivate them to have stronger self-esteem so that they can be a happier, more confident adult in the future, and you can have a good relationship with them. And you know that you're not raising an entitled child. I would love to be here for you. I'd love to talk with you further. And if you haven't yet joined the Stubborn Child Solutions Facebook group, please join me there. Every Wednesday, I go live. And yeah, all the best. Have a great rest of your day. Bye, everyone.